You already know more than you think. The problem isn't intelligence, it's interpretation. Every person leaves evidence behind. Not obvious confessions, not clean explanations, but subtle signals, emotional fingerprints, small inconsistencies that don't make sense until you know how to read them. This is a skill no one teaches you. There's no class for it, no manual, but once you begin to see it, you can't unsee it. And this isn't a quick list or shallow advice meant to sound clever for a moment. This is a full breakdown, a layered understanding, something that unfolds step by step, each realization building on the last. If you skip ahead, you lose the depth. If you rush it, you miss the point. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just understand other people more clearly. You'll start recognizing parts of yourself you didn't even know were shaping your life. From the moment you're young, you're taught to trust words. We're trained to listen, to believe, to take language at face value. Words become our currency, our proof, our social contract. But Nietzsche warned against this, not because language is useless, but because it's dangerous when misunderstood. People don't speak from pure truth. They speak from survival, from ego, from fear. What you see on the surface of someone's personality is rarely who they are. It's who they learned they needed to be. The overly kind person may not be kind at all. They may be terrified of being rejected. The person who appears strong and unbothered may be collapsing internally, praying no one looks too closely. And the most deceptive part of all of this is that people usually don't know they're doing it. Most humans are actors in a play they never consciously chose. Their expressions, their opinions, their tone of voice, all shaped by what once kept them safe. That's why most people aren't hiding anything from you. They're hiding from themselves. Nietzsche once suggested that every profound spirit requires a mask, not as an insult, as a warning. Because if you mistake the mask for the person, you will never truly understand either. Here's what almost no one tells you. People reveal the truth constantly, just not through their words. They reveal it through tension, through avoidance, through the moments they look away, through the laugh that lingers a second too long, through the sudden shift in subject when the conversation drifts too close to something real. Everyone wears a mask to survive, not because they're dishonest, but because they're scared to function in society. People construct versions of themselves they believe will be accepted, but masks are fragile. They slip, and the first sign of truth is discomfort. Watch what makes someone uneasy. Watch where their body tightens, where their voice changes, where their behavior becomes rigid or defensive. That's where the real person begins to appear. What someone hates in others often reveals what they're refusing to face in themselves. This is projection. The person who constantly mocks arrogance may be deeply insecure. The one obsessed with pointing out dishonesty may be avoiding a truth they can't yet confront. We don't despise traits randomly. We despise what threatens our self-image. So if you want to read someone, don't just listen to what they admire. Study what they criticize. And more importantly, why. Silence often reveals more than speech. Nietzsche didn't believe truth lived in endless conversation. He saw language as something the crowd uses to avoid reality. When someone hesitates before answering a question, when they dodge certain topics, when they give short, polished responses to deeply personal questions, that silence is not emptiness, it's information. Avoidance tells you exactly where vulnerability lives. Excessive virtue is often vanity in disguise. Be cautious of those who loudly declare their morality, who constantly correct others, who always need to be seen as pure, enlightened, or righteous. Morality can become a tool for superiority. The louder the virtue, the greater the chance something is being hidden behind it. Real integrity doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't need witnesses. People don't lie to you first. They lie to themselves. I'm fine. I don't care. I'm over it. These aren't lies meant to manipulate you. They're rehearsed defenses. Stories people repeat until they become believable enough to survive with. Self-deception isn't cruelty. It's protection. And that's why inconsistencies matter. When someone's words don't match their actions, you're not seeing deception. You're seeing a fracture. And through that fracture, truth leaks out. Where someone insists on superiority, there is often hidden inferiority. Overconfidence is frequently compensation. If someone constantly reminds you of their success, they may be terrified they're not enough. If someone casually puts others down, they may fear being invisible. Real confidence doesn't need to dominate. It doesn't need to prove. It simply exists. Behind many displays of power, there's a frightened child wearing authority like armor. Reading people isn't about judging them. It's about understanding what's underneath. The person who interrupts may fear being forgotten. The one who posts obsessively about happiness may be asking for reassurance. The one who avoids eye contact while saying, "I'm fine," is telling you to listen to the body, not the sentence. These truths aren't meant to give you control over others. They're meant to give you clarity, because the more clearly you see someone, the harder it becomes to hate them. That was Nietzsche's quiet insight. Not control, not manipulation, understanding. And once you notice the mask, something else happens. You start seeing the cracks. You've seen it before. A flicker of discomfort when someone's beliefs are challenged. A subtle shift in tone when the conversation drifts too close. A nervous laugh that doesn't match the words being spoken. These moments aren't accidents. They're clues. And when you know what to look for, you realize something important. People aren't difficult to read. They're afraid of being seen. In the beginning, we explored how people build identities to protect themselves. Now, we move deeper into the places where those identities begin to break. Because the self isn't fixed, it's assembled. A stitched-together performance shaped by fear, memory, and survival. And the moment that performance is threatened, truth escapes. Most human behavior is driven by fear. Ask yourself why someone over-explains. Why they dominate conversations. Why they disappear when things get intimate. Why they say yes when everything in them wants to say no. Fear of abandonment. Fear of rejection. Fear of humiliation. Fear of failure. People rarely act from pure desire. They act to avoid loss. So if you want to understand someone, stop focusing on what they claim to want. Ask yourself what they're afraid of losing. That's where their truth lives. Criticism is rarely about the target. When someone constantly critiques others, listen carefully. Not to what they're pointing at, but to what they're revealing. Judgment is often self-defense. When you trace it backward, it leads straight to the speaker's unacknowledged pain. False confidence often hides guilt. You've seen this person before. Always composed, always certain, always in control. But if you watch closely, you'll notice tension, defensiveness, and inability to tolerate uncertainty. Overconfidence is often armor. Real peace doesn't perform. Exaggeration is another tell. Absolute statements rarely signal strength. They signal insecurity. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm always happy. I never get affected. Extremes exist to drown out doubt. When someone speaks in absolutes, don't focus on the words. Listen for what they're trying to silence. The need for control often masks inner chaos. When someone obsessively manages details, dominates situations, or panics at change, it's rarely about strength. It's about fear. Fear that if control slips, everything inside will fall apart. The stricter the outer shell, the more fragile the inner world often is. Endless performance is rarely confidence. Constant visibility. Relentless self-presentation. A life curated for attention. This isn't power, it's hunger. When someone doesn't believe they're enough as they are, they become loud. Wholeness doesn't need witnesses. And now, something shifts. You stop hearing words. You start seeing patterns. You walk into a room, and behavior speaks louder than language. You're not reading minds. You're reading masks. And once you learn to see clearly, you can't unsee it. This isn't just a skill. It's a responsibility. Because once you recognize fear beneath behavior, cruelty becomes harder to justify. Most people are suffering quietly behind polished smiles. Understanding that doesn't make you weak. It makes you steady. And we're not finished. Because behind every behavior is a belief. And behind every belief is a wound. And this is where everything deepens. Because once you stop at behavior, you only understand half the story. The rest lives beneath it. No one speaks purely from logic. That's one of the hardest illusions to let go of. We like to believe people argue from facts, make decisions from reason, build beliefs from evidence. But beneath almost every opinion is an emotional scar. When someone says, "Love isn't real," they're rarely making a philosophical claim. They're protecting a wound. When someone insists the world is cruel, unfair, or pointless, they're often describing what once happened to them, not how reality objectively is. People build worldviews the same way they build masks, out of pain. First comes the hurt, then comes the belief that makes the hurt survivable. And finally comes the logic that justifies the belief. So if you want to understand someone's perspective, don't argue with their conclusion. Ask yourself what experience made that conclusion necessary. What are they afraid of feeling again? What are they trying to make impossible in the future? When you see that, opinions stop feeling like attacks. They start looking like shields. And something changes inside you. You stop reacting. You start understanding. How someone treats weakness reveals their true strength. Don't watch how people behave around power. Watch how they act when they have it. Notice how someone responds to vulnerability, to mistakes, to someone who can't defend themselves. Those who mock weakness are usually terrified of their own. Those who punish errors were often never allowed to fail. Those who win at all costs are still fighting an internal war. But the person who can witness vulnerability without contempt, who can sit with discomfort without needing to dominate it, who can show restraint where punishment would be easy, has already resolved something deep inside. They don't need to prove anything. They've already won the battle that actually matters. Fear of being forgotten creates hunger for attention. You've met this person before. The one who needs to be seen in every room. Every story circles back to them. Every action quietly asks, "Do you notice me?" At first glance, it looks like confidence. But look closer. Often, it's the echo of being unseen. The child who was ignored becomes the adult who overcompensates. Not because they love attention, but because silence feels like erasure. So they create noise, drama, performance, not as vanity, but as proof of existence. When you understand that, judgment softens. Sometimes attention-seeking isn't arrogance, it's a plea. The person someone attacks is often the person they envy. This truth is uncomfortable because it exposes something we don't like to admit. People don't always attack what they hate. They often attack what reminds them of what they abandoned. Criticism is easier than admiration. Destruction is easier than longing. So when someone relentlessly tears down another person's success, freedom, confidence, or authenticity, look closely. They're often mourning a version of themselves they no longer believe they can be. Envy isn't cruelty, it's grief disguised as anger. And when you can see that in others, their hostility loses its power over you. When you can see it in yourself, something even more important happens. You become free. People don't act from beliefs as much as they reenact their childhood. Change is rare not because people are incapable of growth, but because repetition feels familiar. A child who was never heard often becomes an adult who interrupts. A child punished for emotions may grow into someone detached and overly logical. A child who had to earn love may spend adulthood performing for it. Even in harmful situations, people think they're choosing behaviors. Most of the time, they're repeating scripts. Behavior is biography, and behind every adult pattern is a younger version still waiting for safety. This brings us to the final realization. People's patterns are confessions, not verbal ones, behavioral ones. Someone who disappears when things get close. Someone who stays busy to avoid stillness. Someone who flirts constantly, but never truly connects. These are not random habits. They are protective strategies. Each one is saying, "This is how I survive. This is where I was hurt. This is what I refuse to relive." If you learn to listen to patterns instead of promises, truth becomes unavoidable. And when you do that, something remarkable happens. You stop personalizing. You stop assuming everything is about you. You stop needing to defend yourself constantly. Understanding replaces resentment. You become a mirror, not a weapon. And that is where real strength lives. Because this entire journey was never only about reading other people. Every truth you recognized out there exists in you as well. Your patterns, your reactions, your fears, your childhood strategies. The clearer you see others, the clearer you see yourself. This isn't the end of understanding. It's the beginning of awareness. The awakening Nietzsche pointed toward wasn't about superiority or detachment. It was about honesty. Knowing that what you judge in others often lives inside you. Knowing that what you admire is something you long to embody. When you accept that, you stop fighting the world. You start understanding it. And maybe, for the first time, you stop hiding from yourself. If something here resonated, if you recognize someone you know or parts of your own behavior, don't ignore it. That recognition is the crack. And through that crack, change enters. That crack is where everything real begins. Because the moment you recognize a pattern, it stops owning you completely. It doesn't disappear, but it loosens its grip. What was unconscious starts to become visible. And visibility changes the relationship. Most people never reach this point. They move through life reacting, misinterpreting, personalizing. They think they're responding to others, when in reality they're responding to old wounds being touched. This is why misunderstandings are so common. Why conflicts escalate so quickly. Why people hurt each other without ever knowing what they're actually fighting. Two people aren't arguing about the present moment. They're defending different versions of the past. One is protecting abandonment. The other is protecting humiliation. And neither one realizes it. When you begin to see this, patience grows naturally. Not because you force it, but because clarity replaces confusion. You realize that most reactions are reflexes. Most anger is fear with a louder voice. Most coldness is a shield, not a lack of care. This doesn't mean you excuse harmful behavior. Understanding is not permission. It means you stop wasting energy on false explanations. You no longer ask, "Why are they doing this to me?" You ask, "What are they trying to protect themselves from?" And that single shift changes how you move through the world. You stop chasing validation from people who don't know how to give it. You stop expecting emotional depth from those still afraid of their own feelings. You stop mistaking performance for connection. You also begin to notice your own tells. The moments you over-explain, the moments you withdraw, the moments you feel defensive without knowing why. Those are your cracks. They aren't failures. They're messages. They're showing you where something inside still feels unsafe. This is where real self-knowledge begins. Not in affirmations, not in labels, but in observation without judgment. When you can watch yourself the way you watch others, with curiosity instead of condemnation, growth becomes possible. You start asking better questions. Why does silence make me uncomfortable? Why do I need to be right here? Why did that comment hit harder than it should have? Every strong emotional reaction is a trailhead. Follow it far enough, and it leads back to a moment when you learned something about the world that no longer needs to be true. This is what it means to read people deeply. Not to diagnose, not to manipulate, but to see behavior as language. A language shaped by fear, memory, and unmet needs. Once you understand that, you stop demanding that people be different. You start deciding what you will and won't accept. That's an important distinction. Clarity doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. You can recognize someone's pain and still set boundaries. Someone can apologize endlessly, but if the behavior stays the same, the pattern is the truth. Someone can explain themselves beautifully, but if their actions keep hurting you, that is the real message. When you learn to trust patterns, confusion fades. You stop negotiating with potential. You stop waiting for versions of people that only exist in your hope. You see what is, and that grounded awareness brings a strange calm. Not because life becomes easy, but because it becomes clear. You stop trying to be understood by those who are still hiding from themselves. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You also stop romanticizing suffering. Just because someone is wounded doesn't mean they are safe. Just because someone has pain doesn't mean they are kind. Understanding adds depth, not blindness. This is where many people get stuck. They confuse insight with tolerance, but insight sharpens discernment. You can see the scared child in someone and still refuse to let them hurt you. You can acknowledge their story without becoming a character in it. That's maturity, and it only comes from seeing clearly. The deeper you go, the more you realize that everyone is improvising. No one received a complete map. Most people are operating on outdated survival rules they never chose consciously. Some learned that love must be earned. Some learned that vulnerability is dangerous. Some learned that power is the only safety. And until those lessons are questioned, they run the show. This is why people repeat relationships that hurt them. Why they sabotage calm. Why they confuse intensity with intimacy. The nervous system doesn't seek happiness. It seeks familiarity. So people return to what feels known, even if it hurts. When you understand this, you stop asking why someone keeps choosing what damages them. You see that they're following a map drawn long ago. And then the question becomes different. Not why are they like this, but do I want to stay in this pattern? That question is where your power lives. Not in changing others, but in choosing yourself with awareness. And as you do, something subtle happens. You become less reactive, less hooked, less pulled into emotional storms that don't belong to you. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still care, but you don't lose yourself. That balance is rare, and it's built on seeing beneath the surface. Most people never look this deep because it requires discomfort. It requires admitting that the world you react to is filtered through your own wounds. But once you accept that, responsibility returns to where it belongs, not as blame, as freedom. You realize that healing isn't about fixing yourself. It's about understanding yourself accurately. Nothing about you is random. Your habits, your triggers, your preferences, they all make sense when you know the story they came from. And when you know that, you stop fighting yourself. You stop saying, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What happened to me that made this necessary?" That question changes everything. It replaces shame with curiosity, harshness with honesty, and the same way you begin to see others more clearly, you begin to see yourself with more compassion. Not indulgence, compassion, the kind that allows growth without cruelty. This is why learning to read people is not about superiority. It's about humility. The humility to admit that everyone is carrying something unseen, including you. When you move through the world with that awareness, interactions change. You listen differently. You respond more slowly. You choose more carefully. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You don't need to expose every truth. You know when to speak, and when silence says more. You know when to stay, and when patterns have answered for you. And perhaps the most important shift of all happens quietly. You stop being afraid of seeing, because once you can read what's hidden, and certainty loses its edge. You don't need guarantees. You trust observation. You trust yourself. And that is the real transformation. Not becoming someone new, but becoming someone awake. The more you practice this, the more patterns become obvious. The nervous laugh, the subtle pause, the hand brushing away an invisible discomfort, they aren't accidents. They are breadcrumbs, small but telling. And if you follow them, you start seeing the unspoken story that every person carries. And what is remarkable is how often these clues reveal more about someone than their words ever could. Words are rehearsed. They are armor. They are carefully curated snapshots of the person someone wants the world to see. But behavior is harder to mask. Behavior leaks constantly, unconsciously. It's the shadow that moves behind the mask. And the more you watch, the more you realize that almost every action is both protection and confession. You notice how someone who claims not to care about recognition checks the room repeatedly. You notice how someone who laughs the loudest may also flinch at criticism. You notice how those who insist on logic first are often the ones whose emotions are the most chaotic. And then you start seeing the patterns not just in others, but in yourself. Why do you over-prepare for situations you already know? Why do you withdraw when conversation gets too intimate? Why does a compliment make you uncomfortable? Or a criticism linger longer than it should? The same truths apply inwardly. The mask you wear is as real as the masks everyone else wears. The cracks are there. The tells are there. You just have to look. And here is the profound twist. The more you see these patterns, the more freedom you have. Because once a pattern is visible, it stops controlling you unconsciously. You can acknowledge it, work with it, or simply decide how to respond instead of reacting. This is where grace enters the conversation. The deeper your insight, the less you need to punish. The more clearly you understand someone, the less likely you are to resent them. Insight breeds patience. Insight breeds compassion. Insight breeds choice. And with choice comes power, the kind that doesn't seek domination. The kind that doesn't need to manipulate or control. The kind that simply allows life to move through you with awareness. You begin noticing subtleties that would have gone unseen before. The slight hesitation before someone responds. The shift in posture when a topic is touched. The repeated micro-behaviors that signal fear, desire, or longing. Each of these moments tells a story. A story written long before the person was aware it existed. Because we are all improvisers, performing roles that originated in childhood. Our beliefs, our fears, our desires, they are rarely original thoughts. They are echoes, adaptations to survive the world we inherited. The world that sometimes taught us that love had conditions, that safety required vigilance, that approval was earned. And when you see this in others, judgment becomes unnecessary. You stop expecting perfection. You stop taking slights personally. You stop reacting to shadows and start seeing the landscape. And when you see this in yourself, something even more profound happens. You stop blaming yourself for what you do unconsciously. You stop hating your reflexes, your reactions, your triggers. You begin to observe, understand, and slowly but inevitably reshape them. This doesn't mean immediate change. Patterns are stubborn. They are the accumulation of years, even decades, of survival strategies. But understanding gives you the ability to intervene. It gives you the ability to act rather than react. And here is the beauty: the world responds to clarity. When you stop being caught in reactive cycles, people around you begin to change, not because you force it, but because clarity acts like a mirror. People reflect what they encounter. If you bring patience, they show patience. If you bring insight, they meet you with insight. If you bring calm, chaos becomes quieter around you. The same applies in difficult relationships. You start noticing which interactions drain you, which trigger you, which call for boundaries. And instead of endlessly trying to fix others, you focus on what you can control: your own perception, your own response, your own alignment with truth. In fact, this is where true strength hides. It is not in bending others to your will. It is not in winning arguments or being right. It is in seeing clearly, acting wisely, and maintaining composure while the world around you continues its improvisation. You realize that the loudest voices are often the most insecure. The most aggressive personalities are often the most fearful. The constant performers are often the ones most desperate to be seen. And the more clearly you notice, the less their performance disturbs you. You recognize it as pattern, not attack; as history, not present threat; as fear, not malice. And here, finally, is the last lesson. Patterns are confessions. Every repeated behavior is an expression of something that hasn't been acknowledged, healed, or integrated. The people who ghost, who overcompensate, who withdraw, who lash out, they are all communicating their inner reality. Not in words, but in rhythm. Not in speech, but in repetition. And if you learn to listen, truly listen, you can hear what they cannot say. The paradox is that listening doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. It teaches you clarity. It sharpens discernment. It shows you who is safe, who isn't safe, and where your own boundaries lie. And as you practice, as you observe, as you decode the silent language of behavior, you start to remember something fundamental: that you are human too, that you too wear masks, that you too have cracks and tells, that every insecurity, every fear, every compulsive behavior is just another attempt to survive a complicated, demanding, unpredictable world. This awareness is liberating. It releases the grip of misunderstanding, the weight of judgment, the illusion of needing to be perfect, to perform, to control. You begin to see life as a series of patterns, not problems. You begin to see people as stories, not obstacles. You begin to see yourself as a participant in the same play, not a victim of circumstance. And when that happens, relationships change. Communication changes. Even your own inner dialogue changes. Because clarity has a subtle but profound effect. It transforms fear into curiosity, judgment into observation, chaos into understanding. And here is the ultimate truth: once you can read patterns, once you can see the masks and the cracks, you can never go back. Not because you are judgmental, not because you are cynical, because you have seen too clearly, because you understand too much, because you have glimpsed the mechanisms behind the human facade. And now your compassion, your wisdom, your awareness cannot be undone. You notice the invisible threads that connect behavior to childhood, the silent loops of pain that echo through decisions, the unconscious fears driving adult actions. And you understand that everyone is improvising, everyone is scared, everyone is repeating stories that started long before they were aware of them. But seeing this does not paralyze, it frees. It frees because awareness is power without violence. It frees because understanding releases you from the need to control outcomes. It frees because observation without attachment becomes a sanctuary. You stop trying to fix the world. You stop trying to fix people. You stop trying to control what is inherently uncontrollable. And instead, you inhabit a different space. A space of calm. A space of clarity. A space of choice. And from that space, you act differently. You speak differently. You respond differently. You live differently. The people who once frustrated you now reveal themselves as they are, not as you feared. You can offer help when appropriate, boundaries when necessary, and compassion always. And the subtle magic is this: the more clearly you see, the less need there is to act out of fear, anger, or impulse. The more clearly you see, the more you can act from truth. The more clearly you see, the more alive you become in your own life. Because seeing clearly is not just about others. It's about yourself, your own masks, your own cracks, your own patterns, your own story. And when you look at yourself with the same eyes you use to read others, you recognize a profound symmetry. Everyone is trying to survive. Everyone is acting out scripts written long ago. Everyone is negotiating with fear. And you are no different. The only difference is awareness. Awareness transforms repetition into insight. Awareness transforms chaos into clarity. Awareness transforms fear into understanding. And that understanding is freedom. It allows you to live authentically. It allows you to connect without losing yourself. It allows you to witness the world without being consumed by it. And this is why learning to read people is not a skill for manipulation. It is a skill for liberation. It is a skill for connection. It is a skill for seeing the truth behind every gesture, every word, every silence. The deeper you go, the more you realize masks will always exist. Cracks will always appear. Fear will always whisper. But understanding transforms them from obstacles into guides, from dangers into lessons, from chaos into insight. And once you see that, you stop taking life personally. You stop internalizing the chaos of others. You stop mistaking projection for attack. You stop confusing performance for reality. And you begin to live with a strange, quiet power. Because the world is still unpredictable, people are still imperfect, pain still exists, but you are no longer unprepared. You are awake, you are aware, you are free. And so, this is where the journey ends, not because there is nowhere else to go, but because now the path is clear. You have learned to see beyond words, beyond appearances, beyond the rehearsed performances that so many rely on to navigate the world. You have learned to notice the pauses, the slips, the patterns that tell the truth when speech cannot. You have learned to see that behind every confident gesture is a shadow. Behind every loud proclamation is a quiet insecurity. Behind every critique is a mirror of unhealed pain. And yet, this is not a reason for cynicism. It is not a reason for judgment or detachment. It is a reason for compassion, for patience, for grace. Because when you see the mechanisms behind behavior, you begin to understand that no one is intentionally cruel. No one is purely arrogant. No one is wholly broken. They are human. They are scared. They are improvising. They are surviving. And the ultimate gift of this understanding is that it reflects back on you. You see your own masks, your own cracks, your own unconscious patterns. You recognize where fear drives you, where old wounds influence your choices, where the stories you were handed are still shaping your reactions. And in that recognition lies power, the power to choose differently, the power to respond consciously, the power to break cycles that have lasted far too long. Reading people is not a skill for manipulation, nor a tool for control. It is a skill for awakening. It is a skill for connecting, for understanding, for living with clarity in a world that often feels confusing, chaotic, and opaque. The more clearly you see, the less fear has to rule your choices. The more clearly you see, the less the chaos of others can disturb your peace. The more clearly you see, the more fully you become yourself. So remember this: masks will always exist, but so will the cracks. Fear will always whisper, but so will courage. Patterns will always repeat, but so will awareness. And in the space between the mask and the crack, between the fear and the courage, between the pattern and the insight, you will find the truth, not just about others, but about yourself. Step forward with that truth. Carry it with patience, carry it with grace, and carry it knowing that understanding is freedom. And freedom is the most profound power there is. The masks will continue to fall. The cracks will continue to appear. The fears will continue to surface. But now you will see. Now you will understand. Now you can meet the world not with judgment, not with reaction, but with clarity, compassion, and the quiet, unshakable strength of one who has truly learned to see. And that, more than any skill, more than any insight, more than any technique, is what changes everything. Because seeing clearly is not just about knowing others. It is about remembering yourself.